The weight of endings. Victoria Bennett adjusted the collar of her dove grey coat as she stepped through the revolving doors of Sterling Legal Associates. The October wind had disheveled her auburn hair, but she made no move to fix it. Some things, she had learned, didn't need to be perfect anymore. The building's lobby stretched before her like a cathedral of marble and glass, intimidating in its cold elegance. She had been here once before, 3 months ago, when she first hired Catherine Wells to represent her in the divorce. Her heels echoed against the polished floor as she approached the reception desk. The young man behind it, probably fresh out of college, offered her a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Victoria Bennett for the 2 o'clock meeting," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He nodded, typed something into his computer, and gestured toward the elevators. 14th floor, conference room B, Mr. Pierce has already arrived. The reckoning begins, of course. Jonathan was already there. Punctuality had always been one of his weapons, a way to establish control before conversations even began. Victoria rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. Each floor felt like a step further from the woman she had been and closer to whoever she was becoming. The doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a corridor lined with abstract paintings that probably cost more than her first car. Catherine was waiting outside the conference room, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, her navy suit immaculate. She touched Victoria's arm gently. "Ready?" Victoria nodded, though ready felt like an inadequate word for what she was about to do. Catherine pushed open the heavy wooden door, and Victoria followed her inside. Face to face with the past, the conference room was dominated by a massive table of dark walnut. Jonathan sat at the far end, flanked by 2 attorneys Victoria didn't recognize. At 41, he remained striking in the way that money and genetics sometimes combined to create. His sandy blonde hair showed distinguished threads of silver at the temples. His blue eyes, once the thing she loved most about him, now felt like ice as they tracked her entrance. He wore a navy suit that she knew cost at least $4,000 because she had been with him when he bought it. Back when being his wife meant knowing these details. "Victoria," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Thank you for being prompt." His gaze swept over her, and she saw the flash of something in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that she looked so composed. She had gained weight since their separation, but it suited her. Her face had filled out, softening the gaunt angles that had appeared during their final year together. Her skin glowed with health she hadn't possessed in a long time. She took her seat across from him. Without responding to his greeting, Catherine settled beside her, opening her leather portfolio with crisp efficiency. The other attorneys introduced themselves, their names sliding past Victoria without sticking. She was focused on keeping her breathing even, on maintaining the calm exterior she had practiced for weeks. The dance of division. The meeting proceeded with bureaucratic precision. Jonathan's lead attorney, a stern woman named Margaret, walked them through the settlement terms. The house in Westchester would go to Jonathan. The apartment in the city would be sold, proceeds divided equally. Investment accounts, retirement funds, shared assets. All of it catalogued and divided like they were dissolving a business partnership rather than a marriage that had lasted 8 years. Victoria had already reviewed everything with Catherine. She wanted nothing beyond what was fair, nothing that would tie her to Jonathan longer than necessary. Let him keep the vacation home in Vermont where they had spent their last anniversary pretending everything was fine. Let him have the art collection his mother had insisted they start. She needed none of it. The moment of truth as Margaret slid the final documents across the table. Victoria reached for the pen Catherine offered. The papers represented freedom, a clean break from the man who had spent their last 2 years together, making her feel inadequate. She leaned forward to sign, and as she did, her coat shifted. The fabric had been carefully chosen and strategically worn to conceal, but physics had its own plans. The material fell open slightly, revealing the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath the soft silk of her dress. The room went silent. Victoria looked up to find Jonathan staring, his face completely drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. The pen he had been holding slipped from his fingers, hitting the table with a sharp clatter that seemed deafening in the sudden quiet. "What?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. His eyes were fixed on her midsection, wide with shock and something that might have been horror. What is that? Victoria straightened in her chair, letting the coat fall completely open. There was no point in hiding now. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective and proud. I'm pregnant, she said simply, her voice carrying clearly through the conference room. 28 weeks along. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Jonathan's face cycled through expressions so quickly, Victoria could barely track them. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally, something that looked like devastation. His attorneys exchanged bewildered glances, clearly unprepared for this development. Catherine, who had known the truth from the beginning, simply watched with quiet satisfaction. That's impossible, Jonathan finally managed, his voice strangled. You can't. We tried for 6 years. Every specialist said your chances were practically non-existent. You can't be pregnant. Victoria met his eyes steadily, finding strength in the life growing inside her. And yet here I am, she said softly. Here we are. The doctors said the chances were extremely low. Jonathan, they never said impossible, but you decided I was broken anyway. You decided I had failed you. You decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for, because my body wouldn't cooperate with your timeline. The truth of her words settled over the room like ash. Jonathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the polished floor. He walked to the window, his back to them all, shoulders rigid with tension. Victoria could read, even from across the room. When he finally turned back, his carefully constructed composure had completely shattered. The ghosts of yesterday. Jonathan's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the conference table. Victoria watched the man she had once loved completely unravel before her eyes, and she felt nothing but a strange, hollow calm. The attorneys sat frozen, uncertain whether to intervene or remain silent, witnesses to this intimate devastation. When did you find out? Jonathan asked, his voice hoarse. His blue eyes, usually so controlled and calculating, now swam with emotions he couldn't contain. Victoria had seen him negotiate million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but a simple truth had brought him to his knees. 2 months after you moved out. Victoria replied, her hands still resting on her belly, where her daughter moved gently. I went to see Dr. Rebecca Hartman. Catherine recommended her. She ran different tests, tried a new approach with hormone therapy and timing, and somehow, miraculously, it worked. I conceived naturally. Jonathan, the thing you swore could never happen, happened. Margaret, Jonathan's attorney, cleared her throat professionally. Mr. Pierce, perhaps we should take a recess to discuss the implications of this development. Jonathan waved her away dismissively, never breaking eye contact with Victoria. The implications, he said bitterly, are that I destroyed my marriage for nothing. The night everything broke, the memory rose unbidden in Victoria's mind, as vivid as if it were happening again. It had been a brutally cold February evening, the kind where the wind cut through even the thickest coat. They had just returned from Dr. Morrison's office, their 4th fertility specialist in 3 years. The news had been the same grim prognosis they had heard before: low ovarian reserve, poor egg quality, less than a 5% chance of natural conception. Jonathan had poured himself bourbon, his 3rd glass before dinner. Victoria had stood in their kitchen, surrounded by granite countertops and designer appliances that felt like beautiful prisons. She had been trying to find words of hope, suggestions for their next steps, when he had turned on her with eyes full of cold fury. My father was right about you, he had said, the words slicing through her like glass. The Pierce family needs an heir, Victoria. We've needed one for generations, and you clearly cannot provide that. Maybe it's time we both face the truth. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. She had felt her heart crack in her chest. Jonathan, please. We can explore other options. Surrogacy, adoption. There are so many ways to build a family. I don't want someone else's child, he had snapped, slamming his glass down so hard she thought it might shatter. I want my legacy. I want a child with my blood, my genes, my name. And you are fundamentally incapable of giving me that. You're broken, Victoria. Defective. That word, defective, had haunted her for months afterward. It had echoed in her mind during sleepless nights, whispered to her in moments of weakness, convinced her that she was worthless. Even now, sitting in this conference room carrying proof of his cruelty and his error, that word still had the power to sting. The price of replacement time met Claire 3 weeks later, Jonathan said quietly, as if reading Victoria's thoughts. His confession pulled her back to the present. She was young, confident, eager to please. She laughed at my jokes and never questioned my decisions. She seemed like everything I thought I needed. Victoria's laugh was sharp and bitter. You moved her into our home before I even finished packing my things, Jonathan. Don't pretend this was some gradual realization. You had her waiting in the wings. You're right, he admitted, his voice cracking. I did, and it was the second biggest mistake of my life, after letting you go in the first place. He moved closer, but Catherine shifted slightly in her chair, a subtle reminder to maintain distance. Do you want to know the truly ironic part? Jonathan continued. Last month, Claire told me she doesn't think she wants children at all. She likes her freedom, her career, her body exactly as it is. The woman I left my wife for doesn't even want the thing. I destroyed my marriage to have. Victoria felt a complex mixture of emotions wash over her. Not quite satisfaction, though there was a bitter edge of vindication. Mostly just sadness for the waste of it all. The unnecessary destruction they had both endured. That must have been difficult to hear, she said carefully. The long journey home difficult doesn't begin to cover it, Jonathan said, running his hands through his hair, destroying the careful styling. But more than that, Victoria, I've spent these past 7 months realizing what I actually lost. It wasn't just the possibility of children, it was you. He looked at her with raw desperation in his eyes. I miss you every single day. I miss the way you used to hum while cooking breakfast, even though you can never remember the actual words to songs. I miss how you'd leave little notes in my briefcase when I had important meetings. I miss how you challenged me when I was being unreasonable, how you saw through my defenses, how you made me want to be better than I was. Those things were never enough for you, Victoria said softly. I was never enough. You were everything, Jonathan insisted, his voice breaking. I was just too blind and too arrogant to see it. My father spent my entire life drilling into me the importance of legacy, of carrying on the Pierce name, of producing the next generation. I let his expectations matter more than your heart, more than our love, more than the beautiful life we could have built together, regardless of children. The woman she became, Victoria, stood slowly, her hands cradling her belly. She walked to the window, looking out at the city stretching below them. 14 floors up, the traffic looked like toys, the people like ants, all of them living their own complicated stories of heartbreak and healing. Do you know what happened after you left? Victoria asked, not turning around. I spent 2 weeks in bed, barely eating, barely functioning. My sister Natalie practically moved in to take care of me. I couldn't understand how someone who had promised to love me forever could discard me so completely because my body wouldn't cooperate. Victoria, Jonathan started, but she held up her hand. I'm not finished, she said firmly. Then one morning, I woke up and I was angry. Furious, actually. Angry at you for your cruelty, but more angry at myself for believing your assessment of my worth. I started therapy with Dr. Lisa Chen. I started exercising again. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during our marriage because you thought they weren't sophisticated enough. I remembered who I was before I became Mrs. Jonathan Pierce. She turned to face him, and her eyes were clear and strong. And then I went to Dr. Hartman, not because I was trying to prove anything to you, but because I wanted to explore every option for myself. When I saw those 2 lines on the pregnancy test, I fell to my bathroom floor and sobbed for an hour. But they weren't tears of sadness, Jonathan. They were tears of joy and vindication and profound relief that I wasn't broken after all. The truth revealed, Jonathan moved toward her, stopping when Catherine stood as well, a silent guardian. What's the baby's name? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Have you chosen one? Victoria's hand moved in slow circles over her belly. Her name is Grace Eleanor Bennett. Grace, because she represents God's grace in my life when I thought I had nothing left. Eleanor, after my grandmother, who taught me that a woman's worth has nothing to do with her ability to bear children. Bennett. Jonathan repeated, the reality of her chosen surname hitting him. Not Pierce. She's mine, Victoria said firmly. You made it abundantly clear that you wanted no part of a defective wife who couldn't give you children, so I'm giving you exactly what you wanted, Jonathan. Your freedom, your divorce, your chance to build whatever life you choose with Claire or whoever comes next. Margaret leaned forward. Mr. Pierce, we need to discuss paternity and parental rights. The timeline suggests that if this child is biologically yours, there are legal implications that must be addressed. The child is mine, Victoria interrupted, her voice like steel. Mine to raise, mine to nurture, mine to protect. You, she said, looking directly at Jonathan, gave up any claim to her when you called me defective and walked out of our marriage. The breaking point, but she is mine too. Jonathan said desperately, tears now streaming openly down his face. The composed, calculated businessman was gone, replaced by a man confronting the full weight of his choices. Victoria, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed something beautiful and irreplaceable. But please, don't take away my chance to know my daughter. Let me prove I can be better than the man who hurt you. Victoria felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. She had prepared for his anger, his denial, even his indifference. She had not prepared for this raw vulnerability, this complete breakdown of the man who prided himself on control. Words are easy, Jonathan, she said quietly. You've always been good with words, with promises, with declarations. It's the follow-through where you failed me. It's the constancy, the commitment when things get difficult. The value you place on people when they can't give you what you want. I'll do better, he promised frantically. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need from me. Just please, don't shut me out of her life completely. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling Grace move strongly inside her, as if her daughter was reminding her of what truly mattered. I need time, she finally said. I need space to prepare for Grace's arrival without the weight of your regret and your promises. Catherine will coordinate everything legally regarding paternity and parental rights. If you're serious about being involved, that's where you start. The road to redemption. Jonathan sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. The conference room felt smaller somehow, the walls closing in on the weight of revelations and regrets. Victoria remained standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the afternoon light, looking stronger and more radiant than she had in years. What do I need to do? Jonathan asked, his voice muffled through his hands. Tell me what I need to do to prove myself. Catherine pulled out a folder from her briefcase. Her movements precise and professional. We'll need to establish paternity legally, which will require a DNA test after the baby is born. You'll need to attend parenting classes, all of them, not just the required sessions. You'll need to maintain steady employment and demonstrate financial responsibility. Most importantly, you'll need to show consistent, reliable presence without conditions or expectations. I can do that, Jonathan said immediately, looking up with desperate hope in his eyes. I'll do all of it. Whatever it takes. The weight of choices. Victoria moved back to the table, settling into her chair with the careful grace of a woman in her third trimester. There's something else you need to understand, Jonathan. Grace isn't a second chance for you to get what you wanted from our marriage. She's not a tool for your redemption or a way to prove you've changed. She's a person, a tiny human being who deserves a father who values her for who she is, not what she represents. I understand, Jonathan said quickly. I do. I've spent these months thinking about what kind of father I want to be, and it's nothing like my own father. He placed value on legacy and appearances and continuing the family name. I want to be the kind of father who values his child's happiness, who shows up for school plays and scraped knees and terrible teenage poetry. Despite herself, Victoria felt a small smile tug at her lips. That's a beautiful vision, Jonathan. but visions are easy. The daily reality of parenting, the sleepless nights and endless worries and constant sacrifices, that's what will test you, and you'll be doing it from a distance, not as my husband, not as part of our daily lives. The words hit him visibly, his face crumpling. Is there no chance? He began. But Victoria cut him off with a shake of her head. The truth about love, don't, she said firmly. Don't ask me that question. Not today, maybe not ever. What we had is gone. Jonathan, you didn't just hurt me with your words and your abandonment. You fundamentally changed how I see you, how I see us, how I see what love should be. She leaned forward, her brown eyes intense. Real love, the kind that builds a life together, requires more than attraction, or chemistry, or even passion. It requires valuing your partner, even when they can't give you what you want. It requires standing beside them in their darkest moments. Not abandoning them because they don't fit into your plans. Jonathan's face was wet with tears. His carefully maintained image completely shattered. Claire's shadow, what about Claire? Victoria asked suddenly. Does she know about this meeting? Does she know I'm pregnant? Jonathan's expression darkened. Claire and I broke up 2 weeks ago. When she told me she didn't want children, I realized I couldn't build a life with someone whose vision of the future was so different from mine. But more than that, I realized I was with her for all the wrong reasons. She was a reaction to you, not a real choice. So you're alone now, Victoria observed neutrally. Completely alone, Jonathan confirmed. Living in that penthouse that echoes with memories of you. Eating takeout at the kitchen island where we used to cook together. Sleeping in a bed that feels too big and too cold without you in it. And now, finding out that you're carrying our daughter, the miracle we wanted for so long. And I have no right to be part of it. Building boundaries, Catherine interjected smoothly. We should discuss practical arrangements. Victoria is due in approximately 12 weeks. Mr. Pierce, if you wish to be present for the birth, that decision rests entirely with Victoria. However, we can establish visitation schedules and custody arrangements that will take effect once paternity is legally confirmed. I don't want him at the birth, Victoria said immediately, and she saw Jonathan flinch as if struck. That's my moment with Grace. My sister Natalie will be there, and my mother. That's my support system. The people who helped me rebuild when you tore me down. I understand, Jonathan said quietly, though his eyes betrayed his pain. What about after? Can I meet her, hold her, be there for her first days? Victoria considered this carefully. You can meet her in the hospital, supervised by my family. You can hold her briefly, but Jonathan, you don't get to suddenly become Father of the Year overnight. You'll earn increased time with her gradually. As you prove your reliability, the man in the mirror is and senior therapist, Jonathan said suddenly. Dr. Richard Foster. I started going about 4 months ago when I realized how miserable I was with Claire, how much I'd destroyed. He's been helping me understand why I valued the wrong things, why I let my father's expectations control my choices, why I hurt the person I loved most. That's good, Victoria said genuinely. I hope you continue. Not for me, not even for Grace, but for yourself. You need to heal from whatever drove you to be so cruel. My father, Jonathan said bitterly, always said emotions were weaknesses. He taught me that people exist to serve purposes, to fulfill roles. My mother existed to host parties and look elegant on his arm. I existed to carry on the family business and produce the next generation. He never taught me how to value people for who they are, how to love without conditions. Victoria felt a wave of sadness for the boy Jonathan must have been raised without warmth or unconditional love. But her compassion had limits. Many people have difficult childhoods, Jonathan, she said gently. That explains your behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. At some point, we all have to choose what kind of person we want to be, regardless of how we were raised. The documents of division. Margaret pushed the divorce papers back toward the center of the table. Shall we proceed with the signatures? Given this new development, we may need to file additional paperwork regarding custody and child support. but the divorce itself can still be finalized today. Victoria picked up her pen without hesitation. She had already mourned this marriage, already processed the grief of its ending. The pregnancy hadn't changed her resolve to close this chapter of her life. She signed her name with a steady hand, each letter a step toward freedom. Jonathan stared at the papers as if they were a death sentence. His hand trembled as he reached for his pen. For a long moment, he just held it, the tip hovering over the signature line. "Jonathan," Victoria said softly, and he looked up at her with eyes full of anguish. "Sign the papers. Let us both move forward. You'll have a chance to be Grace's father, to prove you've changed, to build a relationship with her. But our marriage is over. It ended the moment you called me defective and walked away." He nodded slowly, then signed his name, the ink seeming to flow like tears onto the paper. As he finished, he looked up at Victoria one last time. "I will prove myself to Grace," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and maybe someday, you'll see that I've become the man I should have been all along." The sunset of one life. The meeting concluded with final logistics and legal details that washed over Victoria like white noise. All she could think about was getting out of this building, away from Jonathan's regret and promises, back to the quiet sanctuary of her apartment, where she could focus on preparing for Grace's arrival. As they gathered their belongings, Jonathan stood by the door, clearly wanting to say more, but unable to find the words. "Victoria," he finally managed. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me any chance at all with our daughter. I know I don't deserve it." "You don't," Victoria agreed simply. "But Grace deserves the opportunity to know her father. If you can become someone worth knowing." The dawn of another Victoria, and Catherine rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. When they reached the lobby, Catherine turned to her client with a warm smile. "You handled that with incredible grace and strength. I'm proud of you." Victoria placed a hand on her belly, feeling Grace doing somersaults inside. "I spent 7 months preparing for this moment. I knew seeing him again would be hard, that he might break down, that he might beg. But I also knew exactly what I needed to say, what boundaries I needed to set, what future I want to build." They stepped out into the late afternoon sunshine. The October air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and possibility. Around them, the city pulsed with life, thousands of people moving through their own stories of heartbreak and healing, endings and beginnings. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from her sister Natalie. "How did it go? Do you need me? Want me to come over with ice cream and terrible movies?" Victoria smiled as she typed back, "It's done. I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. Come over anyway though. I want to talk about nursery colors." She looked back at the building one last time, knowing Jonathan was probably still up there in that conference room, processing everything that had happened. But that was his journey now, his work to do, his path to walk. She had her own road ahead, one that led toward motherhood and independence and a life built on her own terms. The promise of tomorrow. As Catherine drove her home, Victoria watched the city slide past her window. She thought about the woman she had been when she married Jonathan 8 years ago. Young and hopeful and convinced that love was enough. She thought about the woman she had become in their final years together, diminished and doubting and broken. And she thought about the woman she was now, carrying new life, carrying hope, carrying the strength she had discovered in the ruins of her marriage. That woman was someone Jonathan had never truly known, someone he might never fully understand. That woman was Grace's mother, and that was the most important role she would ever play. The car pulled up in front of her apartment building, a modest brownstone in a quiet neighborhood far from the penthouse she had shared with Jonathan. This place was hers alone, filled with furniture she had chosen, colors she loved, spaces that reflected who she really was rather than who she had tried to become. "Thank you, Catherine," Victoria said as she gathered her things, "for everything, not just the legal work, but for believing me when I said I wanted to do this alone. For supporting my decision to keep Grace from him initially, for helping me find my strength again." Catherine reached over and squeezed her hand. "You found that strength yourself, Victoria? I just helped clear the legal obstacles." Now go upstairs, put your feet up, and start planning for the beautiful life you're about to begin with your daughter." Victoria climbed the steps to her apartment, feeling lighter with each floor despite her growing belly. Inside, she had a nursery half finished, baby clothes washed and folded, books about motherhood stacked on her nightstand. She had a life waiting to be fully lived, a daughter waiting to be born, a future stretching ahead full of possibility. Behind her, Jonathan remained in the wake of his choices, finally understanding that sometimes we lose the greatest treasures because we fail to recognize them until it's too late. But that was his burden to carry, his lesson to learn, his redemption to earn. Victoria closed her apartment door, placed both hands on her belly, and whispered to Grace, "We're going to be just fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. We're going to be extraordinary." Outside her window, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. One chapter had closed, signed and sealed in that conference room, but another was just beginning, written in baby kicks and prenatal vitamins and the fierce, unconditional love of a mother who had learned her own worth. And that, Victoria knew, was the best story of all.